I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Patricia Lurvey. Some of you probably know her, the graduate students who have already taken Stephanie's class because she lectures occasionally in Stephanie's class. So really appreciate her coming back and doing seminar today. She's also one of our adjunct faculty members. So for that reason, we're also happy she's here. And she was here for a research day recently as one of the judges. So I think that hopefully she judged all of your posters very high.
Unless you're medicinal chemistry.
No, most of them were, yeah. Next time we'll have to make sure that you get our students. So a little bit of background, Dr. Lurvey has a bachelor's and a master's in socio-pharmacoeconomics from the University of Iowa. Originally from Wisconsin, though, you said, right?
Illinois.
Oh, Illinois, okay. Your dad was from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That was it, okay. She then did a PhD degree, and some of you may know Ken Kirk. He's been around for a while. He was at the University of, or Purdue University originally when she went there for her PhD with him as her advisor, and then he moved to the University of Texas at Austin, and so she followed him there. And of course, that's where she met Stephanie Crawford.
Actually, when I interviewed, because they made grad students come out to interview, she saw I wasn't a serial killer, so when I needed a place to stay, let me stay with her 2 weeks before I got on the apartment.
That is amazing that you could handle that.
It's all my fault.
So she obviously finished her PhD there, and then she went on to teach. She taught at North Dakota State University and the University of Oklahoma, and then was one of the first faculty members at Midwestern University here in Chicago. So she taught for a while. Her emphasis was on communications, human management, research methods, and ethics. And she's going to actually be speaking with us today on the latter two. She left academia as a full-time professor and went to work as a consultant, and she owns her own company. It's called Lynndon Consulting, and it is currently launching a software platform called ProMed Manager, which is a kind of a concierge pharmacy practice focused program for elderly with complex medication regimens. So you have to tell us more about that and also your consulting company. But please help me welcome Dr. Lurvey.
Thank you for inviting me, and I enjoy seminar courses because there's usually a little more latitude given, and topic-wise, I certainly took a little latitude because I don't have data to present to you today, and instead I chose to go kind of more of a political, ethical bent. The atmosphere right now, other than insanity, seems to be very unethical. And unfortunately, I think the pharmaceutical industry is falling somewhat into that. So I thought I would take a look. And what you see here is a map of my mind, which probably should tell you something. I'm a big picture thinker. So when I first decided to think about what am I going to talk about, I have to get it clear in my own head what all is involved. And so when you're looking in terms of healthcare, there comes with that the concept of health. And then in terms of ethics, where does that fit in? Who are the players, etc. And then I decided, well, this is a lovely map, and I'm all ready to talk about an argument of should we have national health care or not, but that's not today's topic. That's all over on that side of the map. We're going to be where the little stars are. We're going to be talking about pharmacy practitioners as researchers and the pharmaceutical industry. And as you can see, the main players that surround healthcare are insurance, government, industry, and education. Of course, we're an offshoot of education because providers get trained. And then under industry, the big three players, and there are others, are hospital, long-term care, and the pharmaceutical industry. They're the ones that get quite a bit of the press. Now you'll see when it comes to doing research, almost all the players do it. Government does it through NIH. The industries all do theirs. And providers and even education, you're all involved in research yourself. And you'll see the little puffs of clouds where there are codes. And these are codes guiding research. Research itself has codes. All of the industries, interestingly enough, have codes, and even the pharmaceutical industry, which we'll take a little bit of a look at here. And as practitioners, we have codes of ethics. I tried to find a code for the insurance industry. Was not successful. And I'm not sure government has a code of ethics that actually works either. Yes, they do in terms of amounts of money they get and things like that, but not in terms of looking at it from a holistic perspective in research. So with that as an overview of how I came to want to look at a couple of things. Let's see. Good. Where are we at right now? What's current? Well, in terms of prescription drugs, spending accelerated in 2014. We went from 12.2% compared to just 2.4% in 2013. That's a heck of a jump. Why, you say? Well, they try to explain that here. Due to increased spending for new medications, a smaller impact from patent expiration, and brand name drug price increases. Now, isn't it interesting? They don't say a magnitude on that third one at all. They were very clear on the other two reasons to put it into a perspective of bigger or smaller. That one they didn't. And spending on prescription drugs just all accelerated. I went backwards. How'd that happen? Here we go. How many of you heard this person on the news? Okay. This is Martin Shkreli, I think is how you pronounce it. He was the CEO of a drug company and decided that he was going to raise the price of a drug 7,000%. That's a heck of a price increase. And he was very non-apologetic, and he actually smirked about it. Another article found that a lot of products, and as mentioned in the slide on the current data, a lot of drugs have suddenly started taking off in price. This article looked at codosporin. It's been around forever. It's what we use when we skinned our knees as kids. It has gone up tremendously. And the reporter asked Dr. Gaia, why? And his reply is, I don't know, because it can. They talked to pharmacists in the article as well. They asked the same question. They got the same response. And the reporter is suggesting that the answer is multiple problems within the U.S. healthcare industry, including unwarranted markups as a result of repeated corporate acquisitions, and then the slimy practice of ducking U.S. taxes by relocating abroad. And that's from David Lazarus in the LA Times. And then, not too long ago, this gentleman, the CEO of Valiant, comes out and says, and this isn't the quote I originally had, and I couldn't find it when I wanted to go back. He said his only real concern is the stockholders. The purpose of a business, he said, is to keep stockholders happy. Now, if any of you are students of management, you've heard of Peter Drucker. And Peter Drucker is kind of the guru of management. And he tells us the purpose of a business is to create a customer. And if you do that and keep doing that repeatedly, you don't have to worry about your stockholders. That's taken care of because you're paying attention to what you need to be paying attention to. But this guy, and I think a lot of the others within industry, are losing sight of that, and they're chasing the money. And they're keeping the stockholders happy, partially to keep their board happy, to keep their job. So the industry is non-apologetic. They're not even trying to look like they're caring almost. And this surfaced not too long ago, within the last 2 weeks. How many of you are familiar with John Oliver? Okay, I apologize ahead of time. He uses language my mother would slap me for. But that seems to be what people do now. He had something to say about the practices of drug marketing. You don't have QuickTime? Oh man, this was great.
Not real sure.
Apparently not.
You can say the language.
I knew I should have brought my laptop with me. Okay, well, at any rate, he really pointed out how much it gets spent on marketing practices, and he was really targeting physicians, what they get, and comparing that to what gets spent on research in the drug industry. And we've always grown up in pharmacy knowing that it's a disproportionate amount. So that was no surprise. And then this morning, as I'm reviewing my slides, I see on the internet they are upset because a French drug trial resulted in the death of one of the subjects and hospitalization of 6 others who are in not good condition. And part of the problem seems to be that the drug company is saying, well, yeah, in earlier preclinical trials, some of the dogs died, but, they're dogs. And we couldn't share that information because it's proprietary. And people are going, what? These deaths might have been prevented had you been more forthright about the preliminary research, and instead they put a lid on it, and a gentleman is now dead, and potentially others. So ethics in research is still important, and it's still topical. And it's not just your own ethics. Well, other things that industry has been up to that is deemed to be an ethical problem is ghostwriting. If you intend a career in academia, you are going to be in the arena of publish or perish. And wouldn't it be sweet if somebody walks up to you and says, hey, I got the article all written. All you got to do is put your name on it. Sweet. That's what ghostwriting is. They do the write-up on the research. You put your name on it. It's your article. Then there's the claim of biased research results, because they only produce research that is more successful. There's publication bias, where they choose to put it. There's prescription data mining, which if any of you have experience working in a pharmacy, I remember this from, back when we were still pressing pills. The drug reps come in, would want to leaf through all the prescription files to see which doc is prescribing which of their particular therapeutic category they were trying to sell. And then companies sprang up that do this as a business. Is that not breaking confidentiality of all those patients? Did anybody ask them? No. And then we have gifts to physicians. And I don't mean bottles of water, mouse tablets. Those are popular at meetings. Little things like that. No. I'm talking trips. Big ticket items. They are the ones that get the drugs established. And so they go after them. And then there's industry-funded continuing education. Is that information that you can rely on? Is it non-biased? Or is it slanted to the company that's footing the bill? And promotional speaking. Companies have lists of physicians, experts, that they send out to talk about a disease. And whose product do you think gets named more frequently? The one who's paying for it. And then we have direct-to-consumer advertising, which isn't really totally the industry's fault. Why this ever got approved, I don't know. It never made sense to me. But it's actually reached a point where others are starting to see this wasn't such a good idea. Now, the industry has decided we got to clean up our act. And so they have produced some codes for themselves. And one code is how to interact with healthcare practitioners. Now, this code got adopted back in 2009. And it's longer than this, but I just wanted to give you a sense that they do have some things. I love the sentence, ethical relationships with healthcare professionals are critical to our mission of helping patients by developing and marketing new medicines. They forgot the bit about stockholders in that sentence. But in 2012, according to the Pew Charitable Trust, the pharmaceutical industry spent over $27 billion on advertising in 2012, and 24 of that was to physicians. So yeah, they got this code of conduct with physicians, but have they ever really changed their practices? I would suggest not as much as we would wish. $27 billion in marketing. I mean, you get over $200 and my mind is boggled. Well, I didn't know they had done this either. Did you know you can look up your personal physician and see how much they got in booty from the drug industry? Yeah. This is one way of trying to help that situation. Okay. Apparently they are gutless to stop it altogether, so at least let's share how much you're making. So you can go to this website, enter your physician's name and where they are from, and you can see how much they get from which companies. And you can see down below of those that are reporting how much they have been reporting. Interesting. And then just before the holidays, the AMA decided, this direct-to-consumer advertising is a pain in the butt. And they're calling for it to end. Why is it a pain in the butt to physicians? Pardon?
Patients.
The
They come
patient.
and ask you for the drug.
Yeah, they watch TV, they come in, I got that, I want that. And here's a physician who's gone through a minimum of 8 years of education, internship, specialty, whatever, and can they say that 2-letter word? No. They say yes. It's easier. Write the damn thing, give it to them, get them out of the office. And it's probably even worse because now they are having to see patients more rapidly, less time, get them in, get them out, get them in, get them out. It's too long to explain, you don't need this, fine, and they write it. So for the AMA to finally say enough's enough, this struck me at any rate. Well, I said earlier they have kind of a code of ethics in industry. Brand spanking new, 2016. Here it is. Code of practice for the pharmaceutical industry. And this is the table of contents, which is very small. But if you look through it, most of it deals with how we can get back our good image that we've so carefully trashed ourselves. And there's not so much there on actual research, which I was surprised. And I decided to look up, okay, well, how much research is kind of trashy, fraudulent, not good? Because you've probably heard about the anti-vax movement. That was based on research initially. And the research was fraudulent. So if any of you are sitting here thinking, oh, who cares about ethics and research? Well, decisions get made based on research. And what goes in is fraudulent, what comes out is garbage. But people won't let go of that. So I found this site, and it says why a particular scientist may knowingly submit fraudulent work is within them. But it's real and widespread. 750 retracted papers. That boggled my mind. Deliberate fraud was the number one. I don't look at you guys as inherently unethical. Yet all of these educational programs have been producing scientists who go out there and are deliberately writing fraudulent research. Wow. And it was one finding that surprises the authors is that most research fraud originated in the good old US. And these times, that doesn't surprise me. It would have several years ago. I like the other sentence. People get desperate with the greatest reward academia has to offer, full professorship, because they found the ones doing it the most are associate professor levels, that full professors just...
I'm still trying to find out how much money my doctor takes.
So, just amazes me. And how does this happen? Because, you know, the best articles, the ones that give you the most weight toward tenure and promotion, are in reviewed journals, are they not? Have any of you participated in reviewing an article? Do you critique research in seminar courses at all anymore? That's what we used to do all the time. That's where you really learn what makes good research. Did you ever sit there wondering how this piece of crap made it in the journal? Because reviewers aren't doing their job. But we know what's at stake for the author. Aww. Well, bless their heart, they tried. It's not that bad. Don't give me your article to review, because I will turn it down if it deserves it. Now, whether they listen to me at the journal is another issue. That's another step. But there's a lot of people involved in this, not just the originator. And here is a little blurb on that anti-vax. Vaccines still don't cause autism, but that researcher, and it actually was a person in England, I believe, he finally admitted it was fraudulent. But the anti-vaxxers aren't giving up. So, let's talk a little about what is ethics in clinical research, the actual stuff. Well, there should be social and clinical value to any project you do. It should have scientific validity. It should have fair subject selection. There should be favorable risk and benefit. It should undergo independent review. And good golly, let's have some informed consent. And once you get those subjects, please respect them. Now, does this seem to ask too much? Well, what's social and clinical value? It should be valuable enough to justify asking people to assume risk. You know, that's kind of the so what question. You know, you get all your stuff done and it's so what? Well, if there isn't much of a what, you maybe shouldn't have done it in the first place. But if you're going to ask people to assume risk, make it worth their while. And it must lead to improvements in health or at least advanced generalizable knowledge. There has to be a payoff. So that leads me to ask the question, what is valueless research? What would be an example?
Research conducted when there's not scientific support to justify conducting that research.
Okay, if it's got very shaky underpinnings, if you don't think through the theorizing part, what else? Think drug industry for a minute.
Biased research, deliberately biased.
Yeah, deliberately biased. What might the industry itself be guilty of? Drug industry.
Marketing research. Focus on marketing.
Well, marketing has its needs too. But again, looking at the must lead to improvements.
Creating drugs that don't actually offer anything. They're not improving health beyond what can happen now with the drugs available now.
Commonly called Me Too drugs. They churn a lot of that out.
Is that valueless though, or is that less expensive?
Yeah.
The stockholders like it.
Yeah.
If it's cheaper, yeah, fair. Might drive prices down at the other first.
But if it really, you know, and part of that fault lies with them testing it against placebo. Now they're starting to crack down and you have to test it against the current market leader or the drug of choice for treating the disease. So that at least you have to show that it's better than that. But until recently, that wasn't the case. All you had to do is show it's better than placebo. So you've got one more of that category that really doesn't add much. Scientifically valid. Is the question answerable? Will the research methods chosen answer the question? Is the design powerful enough to find the answers? This is why you have to take research research methods. That's why you learn power. Because don't waste your time and effort and expose people to risk if you can't answer these questions. Fair subject selection. The basis of selection should be the scientific goals of the study. So, in other words, because I have a class of students, I just can't decide to use you. Because you don't happen to have diabetes. Oops. The criteria should minimize risks and enhance benefits. The group should not be excluded without scientific justification. And this gets into both gender, racial issues, etc. And convenience samples, by and large, do not meet any of the previous criteria. And yet, how often do we use them? And why do we use them? Because it's convenient. If you try to go out and get research subjects for a study, it can be darn hard. And so what do you have to do? You have to entice them. We'll talk more about that in a minute. What about favorable risk-benefit ratio? Well, first, find out what are the risks to these subjects: physical, psychological, social, and even economic. Because if you take a subject, knock them out of their ability to work, you have affected their economic ability. Evaluate how likely the harm and the magnitude of the harm. And then they ask that we consider how to enhance the potential benefits to make the most out of what might be a benefit. And informed consent. 4 very important things to informed consent. Competence. You have to be competent to make consent. Things have to be disclosed to you so that you know what you're going to consent to. And then after you're told, you have to understand, because otherwise it's just words washing over your head. And the choice must be voluntary. Okay? This is a picture back from the 30s. Of all people, nuns allowed research on children. Are children competent? Are they able to understand what you're doing in that research? Is it voluntary? Do children think they get to make any decisions normally? No. So children are problematic, but they're very important in clinical trials because children are not mini adults. The dosing and everything is very different. So they're very valuable to clinical studies, but it's a very touchy area to actually use. And then the United States did a study. It's called the Tuskegee study. It was about syphilis. And on the far side is how they recruited. Nothing there about a study. Just let's, have bad blood. I don't know. Gee, do I? Let's go find out. And the next thing they know, they're in a study. And they were given syphilis. They didn't have it. They were given it by the researchers. And then they were sent on their merry little way with no treatment. 40 years later, there's still some living. And they finally stopped the study. And the sad part of it is, the rationale, at least that I've read about it, is, well, we wanted to see what syphilis would do untreated. But they already knew. So there was no need. And it wasn't until President Clinton, first one, maybe, I don't know, he formally apologized to the remaining survivors for that study that went on. It's not a good reflection on research in our country. Respect for human subjects. Protect confidentiality. Permit withdrawal. If I don't want to do this anymore, I should be able to get out of it. Yeah, I'm screwing up with your numbers. Deal with it. Provide new information that might impact the decision to remain, okay? We're seeing some new side effects that we hadn't seen before. You need to let your subjects know that, because it might change their mind. Monitor their welfare, and when necessary, remove them from the study. And inform them about what was learned. Thank you for participating. Here's what we learned from this. Some related issues is minimal risk. What is minimal risk? How do you know that's all that's going to happen? If you knew all the answers, you wouldn't need to do the research, now would you? So that's not always an easy question. Payment and undue inducement. This goes into recruiting subjects. How much should you pay them? Does payment do something to the subject? Do people who participate for money, are they the same as people who won't? Does it screw up with our data pool? Coercion. You know, there's ways to coerce people, and you never even know it happened. Exploitation. That happens more than we'd like to think. What happens to the data? Because if the data isn't protected, bad things can happen. If the data is tampered with, now you're getting into the fraudulent research area. And do you have a conflict of interest in doing this study to begin with? Well, let's take a more of a macro view. I'm kind of hard on industry today, but gosh darn it, they've earned it, in my opinion. So what responsibility does industry have? Industry would say, hey, we're a business. We have products to sell. We want to make a profit. If we don't make a profit, we're not in business. We're just like every other business. But are they? If you look at the difference between a profession versus an occupation, and we like to think of pharmacy as a profession, took us a long time to get recognized as one. One of the hallmarks for being a profession is specialized knowledge. Well, aren't drug products not the result of that specialized knowledge? And this is one of the reasons I never understood why direct-to-consumer marketing got passed. How does the lay public understand the different drugs and everything that goes with it? Now, we probably all heard caveat emptor. We'll let the buyer beware. Well, that works fine with lawnmowers. Spend $10 to buy a lawnmower, you probably got what you paid for. But with a profession, a service, or I'm suggesting even a drug product, you have to use caveat emptor, which is let the consumer trust. They have to trust because they can't understand. And so whether it's the service professional or the drug company, they need to be able to trust. Can they focus on the patient? Because a practitioner, under a code that says we're a profession, yes, we focus on the patient first, not on ourselves. We're not in it for the money. We say that. Nice that it comes along with it, maybe, but that's not the point. Can industry say that? I showed you a slide earlier that would suggest not so much in this present day and age. But they do have to make a profit, and I don't deny that. Well, how are drugs priced? Okay, Martin Shkreli says they're priced any damn way I want to. I'm the CEO. I'm raising this 7,000%. Don't you wish you could do that with your own salary? Well, in 2003, a drug law was passed that prevents the U.S. government from negotiating drug prices with the drug industry. In our own country, we can't negotiate with the drug industry. And they also put into place restrictions against importing from other countries where it is cheaper. Because there was a big rush to Canada, because Canada negotiates.
Doesn't Medicare get the lowest prices for the drugs?
They get the lowest market price in terms of like the AWP.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not the same thing as the lowest price worldwide.
Well, I agree with the worldwide, but within the United States, it's the lowest price
Yeah.
that they get.
No, VA gets most, right?
Yeah, it's a VA.
The government.
Yeah, the government,
But Medicare and the VA.
the VA was excluded because the VA couldn't negotiate. I don't know how that happened. That was way a long time ago. So they were excluded. This is just for Medicare.
And to add to Howard's point, the lowest price listed doesn't include rebates and other deals other payers get. Yeah.
So, and our own GAO has come up with figures that says U.S. prices are anywhere from 35 to 55% higher than other countries. And I've said for years the United States underwrites a lot of the world's drug research. Because we pay the freight on the prices for the drugs, other countries can negotiate to get the price down, and they get that benefit. But the drug industry says there's, dangers to regulating price. If you haven't read this book, I would recommend it. The book is The Battle Over Healthcare, and it's by Rosemary Gibson and Jandaran Prasad Singh. And they talk about the sweet deals that various parts of the healthcare system got out of Obamacare. There are problems with Obamacare. I'm an advocate of more of a national health system, but the way it got put together is problematic. One of the things the drug industry got, believe it or not, is discounts. The government could announce that they were getting discounts from the drug industry, but the prices were not held to anything. So what did the drug industry do? Up with the price, put on the discount, came down to what it was to begin with. Was the drug industry hurt? Nope. They pushed for it. That was the give and take. That's how they wheel and deal in Washington, unfortunately. And then the question is, what about cures for diseases in less developed countries who don't have drug industries? So, it's kind of expected that our companies will do that sort of thing. But a good manager says, why? Lots of money, little payoff. Because less developed countries can't afford to pay the freight of that cost. So that's a problem area. And similarly is what is called the orphan drug for smaller disease incidences, who's going to research that? Who's going to develop drugs for that? Because there's not a large market. So these are the issues as I saw currently in this kind of political arena. If you look at what is going on in politics right now, you are seeing played out, when I was doing my little mind map, it just really hit me. All the arguments against healthcare are contained in the current ethical framework. And I don't know that it's going to be solvable, to tell you the truth. But there's no reason to be producing fraudulent research. I don't care if it's industry research. I don't care if it's research out in college pharmacies or medicine. There's no call for that. It's unprofessional. And aren't we a profession?